Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, breadwinners, thread spinners, all those in between, you're now watching the TNF podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Click on that bell for notifications. And if you want to support us by buying some official merchandise, go to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use a code 20 for 20% off your entire order. And they're really high quality t-shirts, so I think you'll like them. Okay, so we got some upcoming shows. Melissa Fornabayo from The Wage of Sin is going to be on the 4th of August at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Alex Garcia Rivera from American Nightmare and Piebald is going to be on the 11th of August at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Still working on Richie from Wisdom and Chains. We're had some scheduling conflicts with him. Looking at a possible date of the 18th of August at 5 p.m., but we'll see how it goes. And we got some other guests that are going to be upcoming film producers, famous people, stuff like that. Who cares? All right. So my next guest today, I actually discovered her because some guests that I just had on the show, the Noise Avocation podcast, they had put her up in their Instagram story. And I remembered I was friends with her on Facebook, devotee connections and whatnot. I was like, oh, okay, devotee's cool. And then I was like, I recognize that girl. I was like, oh, okay. I've seen her on my Facebook friends before. So now we are here doing a podcast, which is great. She's got a podcast herself. It's called the Hardcore Therapist Podcast, which I highly recommend you guys check out. It's great. There's some really good guests on there. And she is a practitioner of the Bhakti Yoga, which she also integrates into her practice. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Kuretzsky Rossington. What's going on?
Hey, that was the best intro ever.
I got to dap up the guests a little bit, I
I
got to
like
do it.
it.
So, yeah, we were having some technical difficulties earlier. That was a lot of fun, but we finally made it happen. We made it happen. So, the question I like to ask everybody that comes on the show that's kind of in the musical field is, you got a podcast called The Hardcore Therapist, right? What specifically kind of attracted you to hardcore initially? And were you, we kind of ask about like, music and, doing things like what was your exposure to music at a young age? How did you get into all that?
Yeah, so I grew up in Detroit and my parents were like super into Motown, but my mom liked kind of more 70s metal-y kind of stuff. Like she was like, I don't know that it's metal actually, Three Dog Night. She was super into Dog Night. I don't know
Mama
what that is
told me
called.
not to go.
Right, yeah. Okay. So she was totally into them and like Burton Cummings and stuff. And like I was 3 years old and we went and watched them play baseball. I remember this at like a high school, and then like they would take me to see concerts. My parents, like I saw the Four Tops, the Commodores, Three Dog Night, Beach Boys. Like they would just take my brother and I everywhere.
Sure.
But I remember being like, I don't know, 5 years old and really being into the Knack. Like I was
Okay.
like my Sharona. I remember hearing it on the radio, and I was like, I want to hear this all the time. And
Okay.
it kind of like I had friends who were like, oh, Sean Cassidy and like all these things. And I was like, moved into like Stray Cats. And I was like, okay, I'm like really into Brian Setzer. He's like my favorite. I had posters on the walls. And then it kept on just kind of evolving. And I had a friend in middle school, Chris Riley, who I have seen just recently, probably within the last year, who made me a mixtape of the college radio station near our house. And it was like Black Flag and just like stuff I have never even heard of. I wish I still had that mixtape, but we totally were like radio station on, and and we'd hear a song we like and we would record it. And that was kind of like how we went about doing things. And so I started getting into like kind of punk and skate stuff when I was like 12, and then I started going to shows probably about 14 years old. And I mean, I saw anywhere from like Negative Approach, and then in '88 I saw Youth of Today, and I saw the Gorilla Biscuits, and probably have seen Sick of It All like 100 times. And yeah, it's cool. Like I just kind of got into hardcore pretty young. I got into straight edge like late in high school, but kind of got into that. And then I started taking photos and doing like all the things I could do in the 80s and 90s, being a girl who was actually into hardcore in Detroit and not wanting to hold anyone's coat. So I was like doing things for fanzines and taking photos and stuff like that. So that was me.
I like how
But
you said not wanting to hang anyone's coat, because I know that a lot of the women were affectionately called coat racks back in the day.
yes, it was like not about that life.
You're not that. That's good.
Yeah, no. And I still like, it's funny when I go to shows now, still, I will normally be like smacked against the stage if I'm not on the side stage.
Okay. I
Yeah.
have to be because I'm short. I have to
I have,
muscle my way up front and then somehow figure out, how not to get pinned in and, crushed. But because it
yeah, I
sucks.
get,
If you're short, you can't stand in the back.
no, totally. But I mean, I can't because if I see all the people there, super anxious. So the closer I am to the stage and I'm just focusing on what the band is doing, people could do whatever they want behind me and I'm good.
That's awesome. And I remember you saying that your interview with Kira Rossler from Black Flag, which I'm highly jealous of, that your first recording that you ever purchased was Loose Nut from Black
It
Flag.
was, yeah.
Nice.
So I was 13 years old. I got money for Hanukkah and I went and purchased Loosen Up. And
That's
I
awesome.
was like, this is it. This is everything. And then my room was just full of like hardcore and punk posters. And yeah, I was just that girl.
You were that girl.
I was that
And
girl.
you've kind of, as they affectionately like to say in Krishna Consciousness, dovetailed your efforts with hardcore and your profession as a therapist into this podcast. And what kind of motivated you to pursue a career in therapy? I know a lot of people say this, and I've heard this quite often, that people in like the psychological psychiatric therapy field are often doing that job in order to figure out something that they've got going on. Is there any truth to
Hmm.
that, or is it
I don't know.
just completely like you're trying to help others?
So I should probably preface that I was a teacher for like 27 years.
Oh, that's right. I do recall that. Yes.
Yeah. So I really wanted to help kids who were in situations that weren't the best. So like maybe families with drugs and alcohol, maybe just broken families, whatever. And at first that's what I thought I wanted to do. And it was, so I would just start doing like, I did school counseling kind of stuff. So I did what was called adventure-based counseling. And so I would take kids to learn how to communicate better, learn about how people aren't that different and things like that. And then what happened was um, I decided to go into private practice, and I had experiences that were pretty significant when I was younger. Specifically, I had a boyfriend from high school, and then we dated again after my first divorce, and he was a heroin addict. And so I really wanted to help people who were like me, who were like these straight edge, or like, had their look like they had their shit together. I hope I can swear on here.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
All day.
Okay, fantastic. Because I do that sometimes. You know, like me, where they were like waking up with a hangover or living the hangover that the person didn't remember, and all these things just kept on going on. And so I mean, I did 12 steps and that really helped me, and I did therapy and that really helped me, but I always felt like the person that wasn't getting the help that really needed the help were the people who were enabling addicts, were having their life turned upside down financially, mentally, everything. And so that started being kind of my thing. But I do a little bit of everything when it comes to therapy. I do a lot of eating disorders. I do like anxiety, general anxiety, trauma, different kinds of things like that. But am I working on stuff for myself? I work on stuff for myself every day, and I think Krishna, that's how I work on myself, is through Krishna consciousness, and I just try to add that to my practice. But therapy is not for me and why I went into therapy. I think I really
Okay.
wanted to help people.
It's awesome.
just like I did
Yeah,
when I was teaching.
and what did you teach?
I started as an art teacher, and so I taught art and photography, and then I had a position open up where the principal was like, "Hey, you do a lot of service work." Again bringing Krishna consciousness into my actual work.
Sure.
She's like, "We have this program called experiential education, and it's dying. And we really feel like we need someone who's more service minded." And I was like, "Service minded? Okay, what's this?" So I found out about it, and I led that program from 2016 until 2022. And I did really cool stuff. Like I would take kids on trips, like doing, why am I like blanking out? I did really cool trips with kids where we went to Costa Rica and learned about sustainable farming. We did Habitat for Humanity in Louisiana. We did adventure-based trips where there was hiking and canoeing and things like that as well. But just really just wanting to have kids know that they could be more than whatever their test grades were, whatever they're doing academically, that they had the possibility to do all these other cool things because of their own natural resources, like what was inside of them.
That's awesome. And by
Thanks.
the way, to anybody who's in the stream, we're taking questions and comments if you would like to make any. But because I've listened to this in her show, she says at the top of every hour that she is a therapist, but anything that we talk about that would be therapy related is not a substitute for real therapy. So if there are any questions that are oriented in that field, just understand that that's a disclaimer. So,
I
right?
appreciate that. No,
Okay,
totally.
cool.
And if it's a question I can't answer on here where I feel like I need to do more research, every Wednesdays I do a question from a viewer and like spend between 15 and 20 minutes really dissecting it. So I just want to say that too.
Did y'all hear that? All right, perfect. Now, how did your whole bhakti path get started? I mean, you come from the hardcore scene, and much like myself, I got exposed to bhakti through hardcore, through bands, and I had a godbrother that I played in a band with, and all that. So, what was your journey to the path of bhakti like?
Same. So I actually saw Shelter in 108 was, I think, what really, really changed everything for me. Raghunath was doing a kirtan, and it, I don't know what it was. I mean, I do know what it was about it, but at the moment I didn't know what it was, why kirtan, like really, I was so drawn to it, and I just wanted to be a part of it. And so when I was about 19 years old, I started going to the Detroit Temple. If no one's been there, it's a really beautiful place. I wish it was in not disrepair, but it is a beautiful place.
Shout out to my friend Jambavan Das.
Oh, we love Shambhavan.
He's great.
Yeah, he is great. So, it started there. I will be very honest that my parents were like, hell no, we're helping you pay for school. And if you really want to go to graduate school, you are not going to become a Hare Krishna. So like I kind of stopped that path for a while. And I grew up Jewish, and I actually got really into Judaism. I had a rabbi say to me, if you're interested in other religions, you should really know your own religion before you make that decision. And which I thought was really wise advice and sage advice. So he gave me a book called The Sabbath by Heschel, and it was a life-changing book for me. And I was what's called Shomer Shabbos. So I held the Sabbath, and I would light candles, and I would walk to shul, and I would do like all the things until, like, I did that on and off for about 10 years. And then I had a guy who worked at the temple and said to me, I couldn't afford to work for or to pay for dues because you have to pay dues. And I said, hey, I'll do
Wait,
kids
you have to pay
program.
dues at the synagogue?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's a whole thing. So
Okay.
I don't know. I don't even know how to get into all that.
I mean, I
But
get
so
I get the tithing aspect, like you give money, but like it's like a membership or
yes.
oh
And it's
wow.
like a membership so you can get high holiday tickets. For all my Jewish
Oh.
friends out there, you know what I'm talking about. But So the shul that I had gone to and grew up at, I had my bat mitzvah there. I told him I couldn't afford it. My husband at the time and I, we just were moving back from Chicago, not necessarily in the best financial position, but I had been teaching for years. And I was like, okay, let me do something. And he's like, have your dad pay for it. And then I was like, I'm done with Judaism, which is such a horrible thing to say because culturally, I still I'm like love my Jewish people. I love my family. My children were raised Jewish, had bar mitzvahs. My son's been to Israel. But then when I was, I think 46, do you know Calavera?
I do know Colivir. He bought some of my shirts actually.
Right on. So Calavera
Yeah.
and I were talking. I had dinner with him, and I was doing actually a paper for graduate school about like someone whose culture was much different than yours. And I'm like, okay, we're both like these hardcore kids. We're around the same age. People are going to be like, oh, you are the same, but we're so different because I grew up like Jewish and he's a Hare Krishna. And so we met and talked, and it changed my life when I came back to the temple. And it was because of him. And I told him that, and he's like, really? But it was. So I went to temple with him and his family. And then, again, by Krishna's mercy, I ended up meeting my husband on Instagram, who's a devotee. I had no idea he was a devotee. And, ever since we've been practicing together, and, hopefully one day I'll get initiated. That'd be amazing. I'm
That's a
aspiring.
beautiful thing.
Thank
That's
you.
it. It's great when you can kind of you know share that platform. I have been on the search for many years myself, and everybody's like, why don't you just like marry a non-devotee? And I'm like, I don't think I have that capacity. Like I just there's so much that is uh, is different from just the quote unquote the material world. Like we view things from a different perspective, and I think that if you aren't on that same kind of uh, spiritual and ideological plane, the ship could just sink. You know.
Yeah. And so, I had been a seeker my whole life. Like, I wanted to go to Hebrew school. My parents and they were like, "You're fine. You don't have to." Like, I've been seeking truth since I was a little kid, I think, about God, and I've always felt a really close relationship. And when Dial and I met, again, he went under his name, Don Rossington. And I don't know how he had been a devotee for like 26 years or something, a long
Mm.
time. And he wasn't maybe practicing as much as he wanted to. And I know that our relationship has also strengthened his own practice and his home practice and what we do at home and everything. It's really cool because we read together almost every night.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, he's
That's
rad.
awesome. Um, we had a question, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow. It's Tim Cohen, Trivik Ram, to speak of 108. He says, which of these bands, oh, by the way, Trivik Ram, when are you coming on my show? Which of these bands do you find interesting and why? Discharge, Cro-Mags, Murphy's Law, Black Sabbath, The Misfits, Crass. Do, do you think for some people time can be as effective or more effective than therapy? Do you think that Lord Krishna is the supreme therapist? That's a good
Wow,
question.
that's such a good question. Tim, I totally want to like delve into this more on my own podcast, but I'm going to try to give you a short answer here. I'm I'm interested in all of those bands, and I think that there's reasons why people are drawn to them. And if then they can find something else that is more God conscious because they started listening to those bands, how cool is that? Because like I was like when I was a kid, I mean, I know I was listening to Misfits and Crass, and it led me to Shelter and 108, right? So like if I wasn't listening to those bands, I don't know that I would have gotten there. So do I think Lord Krishna is the supreme therapist? Of course. I mean, absolutely. I think that the people that I work with who have some sort of spiritual connection have a much easier time healing from whatever pain that they're going through because we can talk about God and look at God as someone that as something that helps us heal. Do I think it takes time? It can. It depends. I mean, there's I wish I'm like blanking out on who it is, but there's a psychiatrist who actually said that most people get back to their norm, whatever that might be, after 2 years, regardless if they have therapy or not. I don't know if I agree with it. Whatever their norm is might not be ideal,
Right.
but I do think that, using the tools from therapy and incorporating some sort of God consciousness is really a helpful way to work with a therapist. I hope that
And
helped, Tim.
and it's interesting because you know John Joseph from Cro-Mags was telling me, he was like, look, all you need is Prabhupada's books and then the beads. He's like, that's the best therapy you're going to get. But you, as being in a profession, as a therapist, do you ever feel like for some people that could be not enough?
100%. I think when people, and I mean no disrespect, and if I am being offensive in any way to anyone, I apologize right now. I don't think you can always just chant it away, whatever the problem might be, especially if there's addiction or some sort of trauma. You need to have a better understanding of why you went through that, and not just because of your karma, and how to like work through that in a way that you're feeling successful, and so that you can actually have a better connection to God, because I don't think you can have it if you're stuck in those places. And for clients that I've worked with who are like, at first they're like, oh, a devotee told me just to chant it away, that's what will help it go away. It wasn't enough for them.
Yeah, sometimes there's other like underlying issues, and like trauma and traumatic events can take a long time to heal from, and like you said,
100%.
you won't have that connection. I don't feel, at least in my own experience, uh, if you don't kind of do some of the work and whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, as far as like you know your involvement with hardcore and devotees and your podcast, have people actually started to seek you out as a therapist just because of your relationship to bhakti and to hardcore?
Absolutely. So, I mean, my podcast is all about service. And that's why I do definitely think it's really important that I do my interviews, but I also think it's important to do my Wednesdays where I'm just talking about a therapeutic topic, so that people know that, yeah, I understand this and I've lived this life of hardcore, but I also can intellectualize, educate, and help people through different kinds of things, because of the questions that are asked, and I feel like how I answer, not to toot my own horn, but I'll toot a little. But
That's
yeah,
good.
so I have definitely gotten clients, and also I do festival work where I'm at festivals and I do harm reduction, and I talk to people about Narcan and drug testing kits. And if you have drugs and you want to get rid of them, like I have this special detergent that you can use so it doesn't pollute the water system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's rad. And I do other kind of educational information there. And I've had people reach out from festivals who felt like they couldn't talk to someone else, and felt like, oh wait, maybe you will understand a little bit more, because this community is the most important thing to me.
Sure.
So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I heard you on another podcast with God, she was like an herbalist or something, and you were
Ashley.
talking about that on the show, like going around to different venues and whatnot and setting up. That's really awesome.
Yeah. That was Ashley Ellenboss. She is like one of my best friends in the whole wide world. If anyone, she does a podcast also, and I don't know why I can't think of her name, but she's amazing. She's
It
a
was really long. That's why I couldn't remember it.
she's a great herbalist, and
Yeah, yeah,
we do
yeah.
work
No, it was
together.
great.
Yeah.
Tim Cohen, Trivik Ramdas, says, "What is your recommendation for healing, stopping abuse that occurs within the movement? Is it difficult for you to encounter?"
Oh, okay. Um, you have you have a ton of questions that are so good, Tim. Um, do you think people know about what he's asking about within the
Well,
movement?
this might be a good idea to kind of give a little bit of context to that question. Kind of whenever Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement in the West, left the planet, The leadership kind of came under the supervision of some unscrupulous individuals, and there was a lot of abuse, and there was cover-ups and things like that, and a lot of people were traumatized by it, and left the movement and Krishna consciousness as a result. Um, I don't know what degree to this happens that much anymore. I'm personally kind of detached from the institutional aspect of bhakti, but I know that a lot of people have dealt with the repercussions of the collective trauma from the institution. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the groundwork for everything. So what would be kind of the solution to kind of mend those wounds?
So I think that working with a clinician that does religious trauma, like there are clinicians that specifically work in that area, I think would be a really helpful thing if anyone has gone through any kind of religious trauma, especially if they want to stay close to God, but they are unsure of how to like cope with the institution. Tim, like book wise, I will have to do some research and give you some good books, and I'm more than happy to do that at some point. But I think that everyone is so individual of what their needs are when it comes to trauma and therapy. So, like Jay, like you and I could have seen the same traumatic an event, and how it affects you is going to affect me very differently.
Sure.
And so, when you're working with a therapist, let's say I was working with both of us, I would deal with how you need to deal with that trauma in a different way than how I would deal with how I might
Right.
need it dealt with. So I think that's an important aspect too, is making sure that just someone isn't using like a can't, like this is the way you do it. You have trauma. We're going to do these 12 lessons on trauma and we're going to move on, because it's not how it works.
This is the way, Mandalorian. But it isn't for everybody. So
No, nice Star Wars
yeah.
reference. Thanks.
Well, and like it's interesting. I had a god brother, and his mom passed away, and him and his sister dealt with it differently. Like she was going to therapy all the time, and he was like, I don't understand like why she's doing this. He's like, she's dead, like she's not here anymore, and I just didn't process it in the way that she did. I was able to kind of like detach from it. And so, yeah, everybody's different. Everybody's got kind of a different, and that's the thing with Krishna consciousness and the institution. I feel is that they all like it's almost like they feel like there's a one size fits all for bhakti type thing, and that there's a template and there's a very like specific thing that you have to do in order to achieve Krishna prema. So what do you kind of say to that? To like, people doing different services, or maybe like I don't always wake up. I heard your where you were talking about waking up at 5:30 every day without an alarm, which I commend. I think that's
Thank you.
awesome.
By
I used to be able to
5:30.
do that, but I can't anymore.
It's by
Um,
5:30. That's like late.
yeah, yeah. So what do you kind of say to people that are skeptical of, because for example, I know this is kind of a long-winded question, but like I run a merchandising company that does Krishna conscious and like punk rock themed kind of like crossovers,
Love
and
that.
well, I get a lot of flack from it from people that are supposedly authorities and in the know, like that I've broken some sort of Vedic injunction. So and I'm like, which one, so what do you say to that kind of like rigidity and like the whole like you have to be a certain way type thing?
So I'm a rigid person by nature. So I just want to be very clear about
Oh,
that. Like,
okay.
okay, so I like rules sometimes, and I really like to follow them. But I also need to be realistic, and I think people need to be realistic. And one of the issues I have, and I'm just going to use this as an example, is someone like me might not be able to chant 16 rounds or learn Shastra or do this because I am spending 12 hours of my day doing my Dharma.
Right.
So how am I not serving Krishna more so than someone who's able to learn Shastras, chant 16 rounds, and distribute books? It's what my Dharma is my Dharma. And I think it's important for people to be realistic when it comes to those kind of things. Like, I don't chant 16 rounds a day. I have no problem saying that. It is impossible for me to do that while I'm working how I'm working.
Hmm.
And I'm not an ISKCON devotee, so that's another that's another piece that maybe will, I don't know. Sorry, everyone. Um,
Am I to understand like one of your guests was a follower of Tripurari Swami?
I asked.
Is that your guru?
Yeah,
Oh,
hopefully.
nice.
Yes.
Okay, okay, yeah. He comes to North Carolina a lot.
Yeah, he does. So, yeah, I love Tripurari. I think he's like the most hardcore, uh, person ever. Like, he was like, "You guys don't want me? Cool. I'll do my
Yeah,
thing."
I admire that. I admire the kind of like roguish, devotees a lot. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
No, so actually Krishna Das from Invocation is also initiated by Tripurari.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then Guru Nishta, who was my guest Friday.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was that was a great episode.
Thank you.
And like as far as bhakti and your profession, are you able to talk Krishna consciousness with some of these individuals? And
Yes.
if you have, do any of them actually take to it?
So interestingly enough, the hardcore therapist, my business, my entity, I absolutely do. I also do contracting for a company in Michigan, and they're not as keen on that. But I mean, there is Jagannath in my office, so I'm just gonna put that out there. He's chilling in my office. Um, and if people ask me, I have no problem telling them that, I practice bhakti yoga and explaining what that is and what that looks like. I have had clients who've got taken Gitas from me and
Oh,
wanting to
cool.
learn more. I had a client who went on a retreat. I did a retreat with Rukmini Walker, a women's retreat. She came on the retreat. So I do, but I also have to be conscious of, like, people don't want it.
Sure.
I'm not gonna give it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's there is there is a shastra that says something about that. Like you're not supposed to preach Krishna consciousness to the people who are not willing to receive it.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
And I do, before each client, I do pray to Krishna about, I'm not the controller and I'm not all knowing, and please help me guide this person the best way I can. So before even they enter the room, I make sure Krishna's in the room with me.
That's awesome. And I know Trivik Ram is in the music therapy field. If you're still watching Trivik Ram, um, uh, it's interesting because I saw something on Instagram and I mentioned this with the noise avocation guys, where they say that hippies are mean people cosplaying as nice people, and metalheads, hardcore kids, are nice people cosplaying as mean people, angry people. And
Did
see,
Jer
I've
did Jeremy
never.
say that? Was that Jeremy who said that?
Yeah, I think so. Well, no, I said it, and they were. I think they had posted it, and we had kind of were discussing it and whatnot. But you know, it's interesting because a lot of people think that hardcore music makes people angry, and in my experience, I was an angry person and I came to hardcore, and hardcore was like the catharsis or the release for me. It's like, go ahead and be angry and shout and yell and dance around and dive off the stage and get it all out that way. And it's like, it almost seems like the hippies, because they have shitty music and they don't do any of that stuff. They've just got all this rage built up. And it's like, you can have all the positive vibrations you want, but, by God, like who
Twirling
wants to
around.
listen to the Grateful Dead or Dead and you were talking
Dead and
about Dead and
Company.
Company, but
I
I
totally
don't know.
been. I've seen them.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the twirling around, I think it like messes with your brain. I don't, besides other things,
yeah, yeah.
but
Um,
it, it's funny that you say that about hardcore, because I think I've always been a happy hardcore kid,
yeah,
right? Like, I'm just always smiley, and that's just my nature.
sure.
But I did have a lot. I used to always, my thing was, I was the happiest angry girl you'd ever meet. because I think I had a lot of anger and a lot of pain, and I didn't know how else to deal with it by listening to music like that to get that out, and I could just mosh. I feel so funny saying mosh that I mosh, but like, I would
Mosh.
mosh and like do whatever, and even if getting knocked around in a pit a little bit was very helpful for me to not feel so much anger and pain.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like a sport almost, you know? Like
Yes.
there's a cardio aspect to it. There's, you can get out all your aggression in that way. And I mean, I think it's beautiful. I think it's great. Now, as far as, going back to like bhakti and stuff, like what aspects of bhakti do you really appreciate? And and I guess this would be a perfect time to those who don't know, again, bhakti is the purest form of yoga. It's the trying to attain love of God, and that's all the different tiers of yoga eventually lead up to bhakti yoga. So, what do you think is your like most appreciated aspect of bhakti? Like, what do you really like? I love to chant, and I love to listen to lectures. I'm not a big kirtan guy. I know people are like they're like blasphemer, blasphemer. My experience with kirtan this is I'm just going to lay it out. My experience with kirtan was such that I always feel like I'm going to a rock concert, and that it's very showy and it's very emotional, and I think a lot of it seems disingenuous to me. A lot of it seems like people are up there performing, and
I
it
could see
comes
that.
across as sappy and sentimental sometimes, and like, oh, let's get them like, oh, let's swell and crescendo, and like let's play this note and da 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 da, and it's like I don't jive with that. But
Yeah.
I love chanting and I love reading my Gita. So what do you really appreciate? Like, what's your thing?
If I could be on a beach every single day and chant, I would chant 16 rounds, no problem. Like that would be my thing for sure.
Hmm.
But I mean, I think it's still kirtan. Like I love dancing at the temple, and I love just seeing people joyous and seeing the deities and just I don't know, just the energy. I love energy. I'm a very big community person, right? Like I love that idea of community and people sitting together, and I love chanting with other people. Like I really like that a lot. I think that's
Yeah.
cool. um but like things like this is like blasphemy right here. I'm not that into prashadam. I mean, I'll eat it, but like usually, like people are like so stoked about temple food, and I'm
That
all
is
like,
completely unacceptable.
I know that's what got like my husband into it, right? And I'm just like, I don't know what it is. Like I'm picky. I don't know. But yeah, for me, it's probably still kirtan or like chanting and meditating with other people. I do love lectures. Like I do love Tripperary, listening to him. I did a
Somebody
question.
posted a funny comment.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I wasn't laughing at what you were saying.
Were they laughing? Were they making fun of me not liking food?
Well, hold on. I'll throw it up here first, and then I'll get to one of the questions. It's to speak of the devil. Jeremy says I
Oh,
stand by my statement.
we love you, Jeremy. It's
It's
so great.
hilarious.
You know,
Sorry, continue.
yeah, I know. So I mean, I love cooking for people. I love doing service. Like I think that's really my thing. If I could just do service all day long, and I would be the happiest girl. I love making garlands. Is that so funny? Like I feel like it's
No,
ridiculous
I know a lot
things.
of people that enjoy that.
Yeah, that's it. That's my thing.
That's
I'm
awesome.
never gonna learn again. I'm never gonna learn shastras. I'm not good at learning languages. It's never been one of my things, and I always feel kind of dumb, and I don't like it.
All right, let's see here. Please tell us some of the therapists' orientations, e.g., Erickson, Jung, Fritz Perls, etc., etc., that have informed your work. How and why? Also, please explain how Vaishnava philosophy informs your therapeutic practice.
I'm obsessed with you, Tim. Like we need to, you need to come on my podcast too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
But do mine first. I've
We'll
been
be
asking
fighting
you
over
forever.
people. Okay. So I love Albert Ellis. I really like him. I'm super into, I feel really put on the spot to him. I do a little bit of CPT. Art therapy is kind of my thing. So I do a
Okay.
lot of art therapy with people. So one of the things, so I'll tell everyone I'm doing right now. I'm working on a book. So this is going to make me actually have to finish it. And I'm working on a book based on the 12 steps using quotes from all different kinds of religions, because I don't think that some people don't want you to like just this is the only religion. So like quotes from different religions, and then art therapy projects that go with each of the steps. So like a step will have a specific art therapy piece, specific quotes that go with it, and then specific questions that I'm going to ask. And so my therapy seems to be really be informed by art, and I'm not like a theorist girl. Like it's not my favorite thing to think about theorists or anything, because just not my jam. But I like, if I was gonna say, I would say Albert Ellis would be my guy, or Carl Rogers would be my other. Those would be my guys.
Okay. That's cool. I don't know much about them. Uh, I know Jung. I know Freud, and
I mean,
I
I
think
do
that's
like
about it.
Jung. I do like Jung. I do like, Viktor Frankl is amazing, and I think that he's informed a lot of my work. He wrote the book. Okay, great. Man and Meeting or something. I'm going to say it wrong because when I have to think out loud, it doesn't always happen. But I think it's super cool that he was in the Holocaust. That he was like trying to find meaning in life outside of being in the Holocaust. They took his transcripts, everything he wrote, and he rewrote it after the Holocaust. I mean, he's freaking amazing. I could talk about him all day. So he's kind of an existentialist. So
Okay.
there.
Very cool. Very cool. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. I've actually heard some kind of uh, statements that were made about specifically Jung and Freud, that they were kind of a little bit deviant in the things that they enjoyed doing. Is there any accuracy to that statement?
I mean, I wasn't there, so I
Okay.
can't. I can speculate. I mean, Freud was supposedly like, he thought that all the women that he hypnotized, because he first actually wanted to was going to be a hypnotist before he got into what he did, and he thought that all of them were falling in love with him. So hypnotherapy, he was not very good at it, and so that's
Mm,
how he kind of went on. Jung, I mean, I've heard things, but again, I don't like speculating about people's lives and what they did.
sure. I mean that to me, like when you talk about psychology and therapy, like it almost seems like those that were administering the therapy or the like the psychological help would have to be kind of in like good standing as far as like their conduct and their
One would hope.
what's
It
that?
doesn't mean, I said one would hope. It doesn't mean people are always like that, right?
Sure, we're human
So,
beings.
right, and we're put in a position of power, and it could create unsavory things. Oh,
Sure,
Tim
definitely.
Conan, you're not kind of shy, man. We're gonna
He
get you
says I'm
on.
kind of shy. That's funny. That's funny. That's great. And what are your kind of like goals, like as you continue on doing the podcast and with your practice and your profession? Like, what do you hope to do in the next few years? Let's say, what's your 5-year plan?
Oh, well, my 5-year plan would be like living in the same state with my husband. That would be amazing because he lives in Oregon.
Yeah, I heard about that. How does that work? Like, and you guys have been doing this for a long time.
About 5 years, yeah.
Okay.
Um, the eventual plan, my youngest is going to be 17 next week. So I think I'll transition to staying there longer once she turns 18.
Hmm.
I don't know. I own a home in Michigan. It's hard to own a home in Oregon right now. Just putting it out there. So we don't have like full plans yet. We're not quite sure, but one day we'll live together. 5 years, we will for sure be living together.
Okay. I missed it though. Like what is inhibiting you guys from living together? Like you said that Sorry, I
Am
was
I
doing something in the comments section. Yeah.
okay? Sassy over there. Okay, so my I have a child who's still under 18. He has
Okay.
two children. He has two children that are still under 18,
Okay.
and so
So they're in school.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
I have two
Gotcha.
adult.
Gotcha.
I have two adult children, and then my daughter. He's going to be 17,
Okay.
and
Okay.
he has an adult child, and then two that are one's in high school, and one's in middle school. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
You know,
Brady Bunch.
let me just address this statement right here. If you want to come in and clown on the fucking comment section, you're gonna get fucking banned. So it's just useless to do anything, and don't make threats or do anything like that. Like, just I'm telling you right now, don't fucking do it.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
bummer.
Yeah, yeah. So, I apologize for not absorbing all of your
No, no,
question,
no.
but
It's okay. No, no, it's okay. That's unfortunate.
yeah, it's all good. Now, you want to live in the same state ideally.
Oh,
Um,
my 5-year plan. My 5-year plan for my
yeah,
work. So my book will be done, and my ultimate goal is to do therapy virtually. But then I would like to do more festivals where I'm doing step work with people and creating a sober space for people, because I think that that's really lacking in festivals. And so people who are newly sober and stuff like that, I was at a festival and someone said there is not a meeting 10 miles from here, and and so like creating meetings would be really important, and continuing doing education. I love doing my podcast. I think it's been really helpful, and I learned so much from people, and I think people being able to tell their stories is really helpful. And then I love doing retreats, so I'd love to do some more retreats based on whatever I decide. I don't know. Like sometimes it's on communication, sometimes it's relationships, things like that. So yeah, that's a hope.
one thing that you guys had talked about a lot is the concept of self-love. And I guess, I don't really know much about it other than, self-love to me from what I understand is that, you do things you like. And so I'm like, why don't we just, why does there have to be a term to it? And, can the term self-love also be misinterpreted to be like self-indulgence and like, or narcissism, like a love of oneself, something like that? Can
Yeah,
those be misconstrued sometimes?
for sure. And when I talk about self-love, I think that you have to understand that the center of that love is love for Krishna or
Of
love for
course.
God, right? So
Yeah.
I also think that a lot of people that I work with, when I talk about self-love, um, they allow people to treat them in ways that they're not the best. So like they're not creating boundaries, they're not creating spaces where they're being authentically who they're supposed to be. They're not living their dharma, and they're not, connecting with their atma, right? Not connecting with their soul. So when I think about self-love, I'm thinking about that you're doing that soul work, that where you're truly connecting with yourself and connecting with God, and then then setting boundaries so you're not allowing people to take advantage of you in ways that you might have in the past.
That's really good. That's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, me being a entertainment media guy, I always ask people, like, what are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you watching? And I mean, I know a lot of people probably in your profession read some pretty like clinical stuff sometimes, stuff that is related to, what you're doing and whatnot. But like, for leisure, like, what are you working on?
For leisure right now, we're reading Sri Guru and His Grace.
Okay.
Guru and His Grace, yeah. So that is Srila Sridhar Maharaj,
Okay.
which is Saraswati Mat, the one that's in SoCal. That was
You're
his
not
mod.
supposed to
He's
say that name. Just kidding.
well, I hope
No,
I
I mean we
can,
were
because
talking about at the beginning of the
right,
hour, like ISKCON, like
yeah. So anyway, my husband is he's a Govinda Maharaj disciple who is
okay.
yeah. So we're fans. And I got all embarrassed for a second. So we read that.
No.
My husband and I try to read multiple times a week together, like so
Hmm.
that we can connect. I just finished Ragnarok's book recently. I've listened to it twice and read it. I don't really get a lot of time to read for leisure. I don't really
Okay.
consume a lot of media. Like I can't even tell you the last thing I watched.
That's kind of a good thing, though, you know?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
The only time I was ever that detached was when I was living in the ashram as a brahmachari. I didn't
yeah.
watch movies for 2 years.
It's not that I don't want to. I just honestly am just over. I don't know. I have so much that I want to
Overwhelmed.
make
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I
overwhelmed.
have
Yeah.
so yeah. When I watch TV or like doom scroll on my phone, I'm always like, I should be doing something else.
Sure.
And what
We
have
all
I
kind.
been listening to? I don't really listen to very many new things. I've been trying to listen to new bands. I love the new Invocation stuff that just came out. I think there's 3 songs, really good.
Okay.
Um, this is like someone asked me like, what are your top 3 albums of all time? And I started like sweating. I'm like, I don't know. That's so much pressure.
Well, because you don't want to say something too pretentious, but you also don't want to say something too lowbrow and stupid.
No, totally.
You know?
Totally. I mean, like, it's funny because I was just interviewing Colby, who's in Knapsack. Knapsack was one of my favorite bands of all time. And he was
Nice.
talking about bands that, like, I love that. I'm like, God, I should really listen to Husker Du more, or I should listen to The Replacements. Like, I haven't listened to that in a while. And so, like, I was actually thinking, like, I need to, like, kind of go into, like, older stuff that I haven't listened to in a while.
Nice.
But I always like hearing new bands. There's a new band called Vigilante that I really like from Detroit. That's pretty cool. I just saw them, and I think their EP is coming out pretty soon.
Nice. Triv, thanks for the questions. Keeping them pretty
I know, I
consistent
love
here.
this.
What is your therapeutic and spiritual advice for dealing with coping and surviving through total societal breakdown and apocalypse? You know, I was actually going to lead into that question, so that's great. I'm glad you brought
Tim's
that out. Yeah,
he's making me sweat from these.
the world seems like it's kind of under a collective neurosis right now, and you know,
Yeah,
as you and I know, like the
we have
age
no
of Kali
control.
Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, is only going to exacerbate as we get further into it, you know. So, um, how do we deal with that? What do we do?
Well, I'll tell you what I do. I don't know if it's the
Okay.
right thing. I remove myself so much from it just because I know I don't have control. And again, Krishna has the control, and what's going to happen is going to happen. And one of the things that I have a hard time is where people create narratives, and if you don't believe these things, then you're a bad, terrible person, or if you believe these things, you're a bad, terrible person. And I like to stay as neutral as possible when it comes to that, because it's not my place to tell anyone how they should be thinking. And I think it takes away from spirituality, and I think it creates divide within our community, and all in all senses of our community, in the hardcore community, in our spiritual community, in our world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, you know, to kind of comment on that, you know, it's an election season, and I think a lot of devotees in particular, I just want to point this out, are getting way hung up on the politics of everything, and it's
yeah.
just like, you know, like we all chant Hare Krishna. Like we may disagree, but like if you are so inclined to vote, keep your opinion there. I mean, there was a reason like years ago, and I'm saying this as a recovering like, you know, I'm gonna like blast people with like political messaging and stuff like that. Um, that was actually one thing that kind of took me away from Krishna consciousness was, you know, I was in political activism, and then I got out of it, and I was like, why was I doing this? You know, like this is what I should have been doing all along, and I'm blessed to be able to find that, you know, but you know, some people they don't get that, and you know, like you say, you detach and you know, kind of remove yourself from it. Um, what if you can't detach? What if you're in a workplace situation where, you know, people are just spouting on and on about candidate X or candidate Y or something like that? Like how do you deal with all that? Or
One of
how does
my
one, not you
okay,
specifically, but
one of my favorite teachers. Kustuba Das, if anyone knows who Kustuba is from Wisdom of the Sages, was actually talking about his wife when she was teaching at a Montessori school, and she said there was like a gossip and people were talking about things that she did not agree with. She would just continue to remove herself from that. And I think that's the only thing that you can do. The only thing you have control over is removing yourself from situations that you don't feel comfortable in. If it's so egregious that you feel like you can't just stand there or, take yourself out, I just want to ask, like, I would ask the person, like, what good is it going to do? Are you actually going to
Right.
change their mind? And what kind of anxiety and stress are you putting onto yourself?
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, people have to kind of come to a conclusion themselves, much like the religious aspect. Like, if people don't want to hear it, they don't want to hear it. Like, and
Totally.
you could put it out there. I actually had somebody unfriend me recently because of that I was putting Krishna conscious imagery out there. Okay, like whatever. I mean, you can also like mute somebody, but they don't do that. They're like making a statement like, "Nah, fuck you. I don't agree with you."
Right.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
It is. I'll tell you more about that later. But uh, so let's see here. Just making sure there's no more questions in
Tim,
here.
Tim, no more questions from Tim?
No more questions so far, but we've had quite a few people in here, which is really awesome. I think that you know continue to show up and I like having a lot of live streams with questions and interactions and whatnot. I guess what sort of advice do you have for people? Like, what sort of wisdom do you have to offer people that are either struggling or trying to find a different you know different answer, different spiritual approach or what have you? What sort of advice would you have for somebody like that?
I think the most important thing is knowing who your trusted circle is, and making sure that you can count on people. And if you can't count on people, start to surround yourself with people who are more positive and who are, going to give you insight and love that you need. I think that finding communities within, even the internet world by, going on different kinds of podcasts like this, or, Wisdom of the Sages, or, you know, checking out like things at Bhakti Center, different kinds of things that you're going to get wisdom, I think is going to be a really helpful thing and helps people feel healthier throughout the day. Wisdom that I always give people is, treat people how they want to be treated, not how you think they want to be treated,
Right.
because people don't usually do that. And also, like, lead with kindness, because if you are just, if you're trying to be kind and you're working on not offending and you're working on, accepting people for who they are, where they're at, you're going to have much more success and less anxiety or depression. I tell people all the time, depression comes from focusing too much on the past, and anxiety is too much focusing too much on the future.
That that seems to check out, at least for me. Like we're talking about, like on your friend's podcast, ruminating, and like that's a hard thing to do, especially when you're not actively engaged in something. But then it almost seems you want to be involved in something, you want to move on from whatever depression or trauma that you're dealing with, but you just can't. Like you, if you physically can't, your body is not allowing you to get
Yeah.
up and do things and enjoy things and stay busy and productive.
One of the things I always tell people when they're in depression is make your bed. If you can make your bed, just do that one thing, you've had a successful day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it does not have to be like, I'm doing this and doing this and doing this and doing this to get healthier. It can just be one simple act that is going to make you feel better. Because I know when I make my bed, I don't get back in it.
That's good. And it seems like it would kind of affect the like feng shui, and like if you see that your bed and where you sleep is in at least in some sort of due order, oh, you might want to work on the rest of your room and like make it so that it's orderly and not chaotic, because at least for me, if my living situation is chaotic, it's indicative of how my life is going.
Totally.
Yeah.
And with that, I actually tell people who want to do more, like, okay, after we make the bed, I tell them to set timers. Like, you can do anything for 5 minutes, right? And you can actually get a lot done and see a lot. So, like, I have clients who are like, I have just so many dishes in my sink. I have this and that. Like, I'll be like, just load your dishwasher. It doesn't even matter if they're dirty. Maybe you have to run it twice, but then they're not in your sink. You're doing something that's productive. Or clean off this part of your counter. And it just seems to change how people feel when they have a
Yeah.
space that is clean, which we learn in Krishna Consciousness, right? Like,
Yeah.
cleanliness
Well,
is
and
for
when you're
Krishna
cleaning
also.
Krishna's temple, you're cleaning your heart. That's
Oh,
what they
yes.
say. It's true. Mine's got a long ways to go, but and you had mentioned something about how on your friend's podcast how you would work with adults like sitting on the floor and like doing kind of childlike
Like,
things in order to like open up a different portion of their brain or whatever.
yeah, I'm super into play therapy.
Okay.
So I guess I should have said that too. Sorry, Tim, that's part of that other question that you asked before. Um, so yeah, like, I think that if you activate your childlike mind, if you activate this place where you're able to play, you become more creative and more open. So I'm really into the idea of any kind of play. It could be playing, like, I think I might have talked about it was my podcast, but Ashley was
Oh, it was
on.
yours. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no, it's okay. So I think I talked about playing Barbies with one of my clients, and
Yeah.
she was like my age, right?
Okay.
And she was so not open about her life and us just playing Barbies. She said when she was a little kid she used to play apartment, and then she started talking about like things about her family that she was just not willing to talk about because she had something else to do rather than just sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
When I work with kids, I do a lot of like activity where we're moving our bodies a lot. I mean, it might seem silly, but like skipping and hopping and different kinds of things to then get them to talk about things that might be difficult for them has been really, I've had a lot of success with that.
Hmm. Do I've heard of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's some kinds of like different variations on therapy where you can actually like I don't know, this might be a strong word, but like put the person through the trauma or abuse or kind of use triggers and just
Re-traumatize them.
basically, yeah. Is there like a thing like that?
Yeah,
A
there are a few
method?
things. There are a few things where you can re-traumatize people, and sometimes you don't know. At least from seeing other clinicians, I have never experienced it where I've re-traumatized someone in a way where I couldn't get them out of the situation.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's definitely things. I think when people do trauma informed work, sometimes they do change the narrative of the trauma is what like kind of the goal is, and is like what you can get out of that. I don't usually go that route. In hypnotherapy, you can sometimes re-traumatize people a little
Yeah.
bit. So those are things you have to kind of be careful at. When I work with my trauma clients, one of the things that I like to really do is something called an open letter, where you say exactly what you want to say to the person that hurt you, and it seems to be a really effective way to get over some of that pain without it being so focused on the pain. It's more focusing on like if you had a magic wand. It's called a miracle question. You had a magic wand and you could change. The trajectory of everything and say everything that you wanted to say to someone without any repercussions, what would it be?
Or is
And
that a
have,
hypothetical question or are you asking me?
no, I'm not asking you. I'm telling
Oh,
you what I
you're
do with
saying
clients.
okay. I wasn't sure. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, if you would like to answer it, by all means.
There's a lot of things I would like to say to a lot of people. There's a specific subset of individuals that refuse to communicate with me. I'm going through a situation that I experienced about 2 years ago, and trying to find some closure from that. But these individuals don't flat out refuse to communicate. So, you know, how when you have them do this, they write it out in like a letter form, or and
Yeah,
is it
like
one of those things like Abraham Lincoln used to write out letters to his enemies, and then he would take them and he would burn them?
you could do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like a client I just worked with recently that I did this with, she read it to me, and she was like, she cries a lot, and she was not crying, and she said everything she wanted to say. I asked her a few questions because she mentioned other people, and she's like, I want to write a letter to this person, and I want to write a letter to this person. I'm like, do it, you know. And
Yeah.
I want to say, with the people that are not willing to communicate with you and you want closure, non-communication is closure. They
Is it?
close the door. Yeah, the door's
But what if
closed.
you but what if you feel that you have been wronged or slighted?
How what they think of you is none of your business, right?
No, no,
So
no, no. I don't give a shit what anyone thinks about me. I'm saying like like what's the best way to say this? Like if you were trying to, right or wrong. I don't even think these individuals think they're wrong though, is the problem, you know?
yeah, and you can't teach them that lesson.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
can't get that from them if they're not willing to. I mean, this is actually a really good 12-step kind of thing to talk about.
Okay.
To be honest with you, it's like you can't get them to do anything that they don't want to do. And it's and having them do that, is it really more about what you want them to gain from it than what you need?
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
So
Yeah,
it's
very
not,
true.
it becomes not your business anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, at least in, like my situation, like if I'm, when you talk about like kind of re-traumatizing somebody, like even if I think about something sometimes, I feel it in my blood, anger, I feel it, like if somebody says something to me, I'll feel it, like as you get older, it seems like you kind of become more in touch with, your body and energy and things like that. So, um,
Our body knows even if we don't.
what's that?
Our body knows even if we don't. There's
Right.
a really good book called The Body Keeps Score. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's all about how our body stores trauma in certain areas from specific kinds of trauma. So I would
Okay.
recommend that to anyone who's. It's kind of heavy, I think, but it's good if you want to understand where it's coming from.
Say the title again.
The Body Keeps Score.
The body keeps score. Okay, that's very good. That's great. And any other reads that you might recommend for people that are, I guess, kind of like general self help or therapy kind of reads?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna pull up my books
Oh,
off of my Audible, because that's usually where I like to keep them.
sure.
A, a book that I recommend all the time with people who are like couples who are struggling. It's a really easy read, and it's very instructional. It's called Communicating Your Feelings Without Starting a Fight. It's a really good book. I already said about The Body Keeps Score. I really like Dr. Nicole LaPira, How to Do the Work. It's a good book, like a self work. A book that I recommend to a lot of my clients when they feel like they're not living to their dharma is the art of the War of Art by Stephen
I've heard of that
Pressfield.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's super helpful. Let's see, what else do I really like? I There's a book about coping with grief. It's just called Understanding and Coping with Grief, that is pretty good.
Mm.
My favorite book that I recommend more than any other book is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. It's
Okay, that sounds like a good one.
a really good one. Um, yeah, I guess that's really, those are my main ones. I mean, if people who have ADHD, there's books that I talk about with that too, but those would be the ones that I would recommend right now, just off the top of my head.
Okay,
They're
very
out of the
cool.
top of my Audible.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, well, any more like last words, any parting words?
Therapy isn't weakness. If you feel like you need it, there's people who can help you. And if you don't feel like you can find the right person, you should interview them. Like you should ask for a consultation before you get into a situation
That's a
rather
good
than
idea.
rather than getting stuck with someone that you don't feel like you mesh with. I do
Sure.
free 30-minute consultations with anyone I work with before I start working with them. I want to see if they're a good match for me too. I had a client, actually I didn't take her, but I had someone that I felt like her issues were a little bit out of my scope,
Hmm.
and I gave her recommendations for other people that I thought would be a better match.
Okay.
And you really want a therapist that does that. Um, I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
That's wonderful though, because that's actually great advice for me. You know, I've been in and out of therapy, fuck, most of my life. You know, so it's like, but I've never done that approach to where I, kind of interview or ask questions to the individual. It's just kind of like, all right, here's your guy, here's your girl. You know, it's like don't get a lot
Yeah.
of choice in that. I was not aware that option was available.
I don't know that everyone makes it available, but if you were to contact me, I have a button that says connect with me, and I ask you what your availability is to do a 30-minute consultation.
That's awesome. Well, you were
And
you were doing great things, and I mean, I think
thank
it's I
you.
think it's wonderful what you're doing and how you've kind of been able to, cross over all the aspects of your life and your journey into your present day path. I think it's
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank
Yeah,
you. I
absolutely.
appreciate it.
And I'll be sure to post all the links to your podcast, and I know you have some shirts for sale now too, right?
I do. So I have merch. It's on my website, and all proceeds go to underinsured and uninsured people for mental health help.
Yeah, I heard about that too. That's really advantageous, and I think that's beautiful that you're
Thank
providing
you.
people with that opportunity. I think that's
Thank you.
great.
If you see me
Um,
at shows, though, it's different merch than what's on my website.
oh, really?
hmm
Why is
Like
that?
this isn't on my website.
Oh, how come?
I don't know. I just had them made for shows.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I
wait,
want
we
to do
got
like
one
a
last question. We got one
okay.
last question from
Oh,
Trip.
it's him.
Here we go. What are the best mental health exercises to keep healthy, aware when under attack from societal ills, power structure attack?
Will you keep it up for 1 second? I want to read it
Sure.
myself too.
Yeah.
Best mental health exercises to keep.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure what you're saying. Wait, can you repost the question? Did he respond?
He will shortly. Let me
Okay.
see if I can interpret what he said. What are the best to keep? Maybe he meant to say keep aware or keep healthy, and just both words when under attack from societal ills, power structure attack. Like the government? Is that what we're talking about?
I mean, is he talking? Are you talking about Krishna consciousness?
Maybe that's
That's
what it is. Yeah.
I really just turn off my shit. Like
Yeah.
like I
Unplug.
just unplug, I get away from people because if people just want to say mean things, I did actually please interpret. I think you know what I mean. I think we got you.
Okay.
Um I posted once something that happened like a super anti-Semitic thing was said to me, and people were so mean to me. I talked about it because I was like so taken aback, and people were saying the meanest things to me about like why the long face, and like just mean things about my appearance, and anti-Semitic things, and I just deleted the post and then just stayed off of social media for a while.
That's good.
It
Yeah.
just wasn't worth it to me to hear negative things that people have to say. It's not, I don't know why people just can't stay in their own lane. Like we have to just
Right.
stay on our own sides of the street. That's like again, I feel like that's a very AA thing. Like you want to keep your side of the street clean,
Right.
and rather than focus on everyone else's. And then you also have to decide who you're going to I talk about this with clients, like who are you going to actually invite into your house? Maybe you're going to have some people that you'd let on your street, but they wouldn't be on your driveway. And maybe those people on your driveway you wouldn't let on your porch. And maybe those people on your porch you wouldn't let inside your house, right? So you have to
Right.
decide where your level of comfort for the people that you're at. Tim, I hope that kind of answered it. When it comes to what people are saying about like religion, or things that you don't agree with politically, maybe, or any other kind of social things, like, again, it's their business, and it's not my job to change people's opinion.
Sure. Definitely. That's a great answer.
Thanks.
All right. I want to thank everybody that came to the live stream. You guys are awesome. This has been great. Terrific, Rom, for consistently showing up and being a fan and a supporter. Bless you, sir. Hare Krishna. And like I had mentioned before at the top of the hour, if you are interested in official merchandise from Hell's Heart Merch Co., you can go to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order. They're really nice Bella Canvas tri-blend shirts. They feel soft and amazing. I'll throw a
We
few
love a
samples
soft
up
shirt.
here. Yeah, they're great. Is that what you use?
No.
Oh,
Gildan.
the Gildan heavy cottons are really nice.
Yeah, that's what it is.
They feel soft. Let me throw up some samples here. We got Bullet, Steve McQueen. I like movies. Don't show that to Kira Rossler, please.
No, she's okay. She just got one of my shirts.
Yeah. This one's from Psycho 2. We got a Scream, Glow in the Dark, Tatum, and a Randy Glow in the Dark Tatum. There's more designs up there, but I only did 6 with that particular model. So check it out, hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. You can follow me on Instagram at the TNF podcast, the T and F podcast on Instagram. And you can also follow me on Instagram at hellsheartco for the merchandising. Got a whole bunch of stuff, but please support, like, comment, share, subscribe, and please support this awesome lady right here. She's got really great things going on. Check her podcast out, and we'd love to have you back again sometime in the future.
I would love
think
it.
That would be awesome. Yeah, this has been really great. So
no, totally. If people I would love to do like more people. If people want to like back and forth, I would love it. I'd be into it. And I want you on my podcast.
What's that?
I want you on my podcast.
I am always willing to be a podcast guest. I think that's,
cool.
And for somebody that deals with mental health problems, I'm sure it would be very advantageous, years of it. It sucks. So
we'll work through it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to thank everybody for showing up, and namaste, job bless, be good. Hare Krishna, Sarah Kuretzsky Rossington. Haribo.
Haribo.